Do you know the optimal ball position for each club in your golf bag? Well, believe it or not, it's different for every single club. Today you're going to find out just exactly where you need to place the ball with Ian and Thomas. Welcome back to the Swing Lab Performance YouTube channel. Today you're joined by Thomas Campbell, Director of Instruction, and Ian Mackenzie-Olson, Teaching Professional. Today we're going to be discussing ball position. Ian, I think we've been discussing here our different preferences that we have on ball position. I like to go with a little bit more of a scientific formula. I'm holding a yardstick ruler and I'm going by inches. You were discussing how each club is kind of like generalized.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our views on it are a little bit different, but I don't think either one of them is right or wrong. I kind of like to keep my pitching wedge through 7-iron in about the same spot, maybe my 6 through 4-iron. I like to move it up a little bit more, move up the hybrid a touch, and then 3-wood and driver are both sitting off the inside left heel.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really good generalization. Me knowing, that every golf club is half an inch longer going through the bag, I always like to use a formula where I start my ball position directly right in the middle of the stance with a pitching wedge. And then as every club gets longer for your bag, believe it or not, a 9-iron is half an inch longer than a wedge, 8-iron is another half an inch longer than a 9. I move my ball position half an inch further forward per golf club. So I gradually move my ball position up as well. I just kind of do it by increments, and I always check it with a yardstick ruler. But I think this is important because, you will find that every single teaching professional out there probably has a different preference on how they instruct ball position. But the end goal is, we're trying to get to the same principle, right? We're trying to give you the most optimal low point, attack angle, everything like that, making the best contact per golf club in your bag. Let's face it, with a wedge, we want to hit down on it a little bit more and create more spin by taking a divot. However, with a 4-iron, we don't want to take the same size divot as we would with a wedge, so that's why we'd have that ball position further forward. So today, Ian and I are going to discuss how we set up for ball position with each club in the bag.
So for me, ball position can vary depending on the type of shot I'm hitting, whether I'm trying to hit a high shot, a low shot, the ball position can change a little bit. For this video, I'm just going to focus on my stock shots. So for my wedges, 9-iron, 8-iron, 7-iron, I just like to keep them all pretty much in the middle of my stance. So with these alignment sticks, I'm just showing you that, this ball is exactly in the middle of my stance. Now, as we get further on in my set, 6-iron, 5-iron, 4-iron. Here I have a 5-iron. I like to make sure that ball is exactly in between the middle of my stance and the inside of my left foot. So I want that alignment rod to just kind of be right in the middle. And then as I move on through 3-wood and driver, I want to make sure that ball is directly off the inside of my left heel. So as you see, that alignment stick is touching the inside of my left foot, and that'll allow me to hit more up on the ball and optimize my driver. But with the lower clubs, obviously we want to hit more down on the ball, and that helps by moving the ball further back in our stance.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, hitting down on the ball. If you want to grab your pitching wedge and keep driver also in your hand, I just want to show how that shaft lean is affected at setup. So if you're going to set up there and set up like you're going to set up with a wedge, you notice how this golf shaft here, it's leaning slightly forward. So he's getting ready to kind of compress the ball. We don't want to present a lot of loft on that club. We don't want to flip at it. However, with driver, if we do the same here, what you'll kind of notice is that golf shaft is no longer leaning forward like that. He's not way up here trying to get those hands forward or anything like that, because that looks really uncomfortable. That shaft's actually leaning slightly back. So that also helps with that attack angle piece and try to hit up on the ball to get the ball in the air because the ball is raised on the tee.
Now, this is a pretty simple formula that I use. I know that some teachers, they maybe like to go a little more specific, move the ball with every club. You were telling me how you like to maybe move the ball a half inch with every club. Now, how would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, this is, like I said, a little bit more scientific. So that's, first I want to kind of measure the size of my shoulders. So if you could just kind of measure, I'm usually pretty close to 20 inches, but let's just kind of see how wide my shoulders are.
Yep, about 18 inches.
About 18 inches. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm still going to keep this other alignment stick here. And I'm going to go to about 18 inches. So this is the start of my left foot. This is the start of my right foot. 18 inches in half would be 9. So this is, like I mentioned, this is getting a little bit more scientific. If you want to pass me a wedge, all right. So pitching wedge, when I'm setting up to this, if I know that my toe right there is at 0, this toe here is at 18. Now I know that that ball position, I have it on 9, is right directly in the middle of my stance. It's kind of right split here between my heels. You know, if you flare your foot, obviously it's going to be a little bit different, but for the most part, that there is going to be directly right in the middle of your stance. As I mentioned, so this is pitching wedge. I want you to just pass me a 9-iron, an 8-iron, and a 7-iron. I want to talk about the length of the golf club. So we got 9-iron. Notice how with the pitching wedge to the 9-iron, notice how we're talking about half an inch in length. So that pitching wedge is half an inch longer. Sorry, the 9-iron is half an inch longer than the pitching wedge. We'll grab these other two. So now we're going to go to 8-iron. Notice now we're another half an inch longer there. Now we go to 7-iron. Notice how we're another half an inch longer there. So I like to use the formula that if I'm using, pitching wedge, I'm right in the middle of my stance. So, for example, if I was going to grab 7-iron, 7-iron is 1.5 inches longer than the pitching wedge. So my ball position is going to be 1.5 inches further forward. So I'm going to put this at 7.5. So this is where I would play the ball position with my 7-iron. You notice my hands are still kind of pushed forward just a little bit there, not maybe as much as it would be with a wedge, but I'm also not going to maybe take the same size divot as I would with a wedge either. So, my formula is a little bit different to your formula. We're really getting at the same preferences and principles, right? My preference is a little bit more scientific. Your preference is just a little bit more, gradual with regards to grouping of the golf clubs. We're achieving the same thing. We're achieving changing the attack angle, changing the low point in the golf swing, and finding a way to hit, your optimal shot with each particular golf club. I'm not saying one's perfect. I'm not going to say my one's perfect or your one's perfect. All I'm saying is that every instructor out there is going to have a different methodology out there. So if you come in for a lesson at Swing Lab, Ian might say ball position, middle of the stance with wedge. I also say ball position, middle of the stance with wedge. But he might gradually move you forward a different way that I move you forward. So ball position, really, really important. I think this is a great way to think about when you're setting up for a shot. The most important thing is as that club gets longer, we move that ball position gradually a little bit further in our bag because we don't want to hit down on a longer club.